Individuals who indulge in animal cruelty, I mean, it's proven, research has proven that these are the ones who in the future are, your serial killers. Checking animal cruelty at the onset is so important and apprehending the perpetrators.
So today I am really excited to be at this center, and they are known as the Guardians of the Wild. It is Rescue Charitable Trust, and I am sitting with the founder and the visionary of this organization, which has helped animals for 17 years to find their voice and to find their own place in this world. And I have with me Neha Panchamya, who is an amazing woman behind all of the incredible work which happens in this organization. So, what inspired you, Neha, to start this?
I think I was 23 when this organization began back in 2007, and I just moved here from Mumbai, and I've completed my studies. By education, I'm a dietitian actually. And but since I was very, very young, I think watching an animal suffering is something that would really bother me. I'm the kind who, if I saw an animal outside in nature and doing its own thing, I'm very unbothered. Not somewhere where I feel like I have to go and intervene.
Correct.
But if I see something suffering, I think ever since I was really young, I felt this really strong urge to do something about it, to help it.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say this, that we're all going to die someday.
True.
And what we hope for our loved ones is that the suffering is the least. So when I was very young and I'd rescue an animal, the outcome, life or death, it was secondary. The most important thing that mattered to me is to reduce its suffering, no matter the outcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, when you started this off, what were the initial challenges you faced, or how did you think about this? Because it's been a 17-year journey,
Yeah.
and it's not easy to consistently be at it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would like to know more about all of these aspects of starting this organization, why this is so important in India to have this.
So I think that when I started at 23, there was, like I said, just the want to do something, right?
Correct.
And there's many of us who want to help animals, start
True.
organizations. Of course, it takes a lot of passion, but you have to be really practical as well. And I think if you're just passionate, you burn out.
True.
So you have to be passionate and practical in equal measure. And I think that's something that has, sort of helped keep this journey going.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I feel sorry, what was the question again?
So, what were the challenges?
The challenges.
Yeah.
So I think when I started, right, I think I was very clear that it should be an organization, because as an individual you can do only that much. I had just finished my studies, come back from the UK, and I always have this thing where I see what is happening in the rest of the world. And I have seen other rescue organizations, and it didn't exist in India. There were NGOs, there were other people focusing, doing the very best they could.
Correct.
But I feel like this field, it was just looked at as, in the domestic world, it's more like some old lady is doing it.
Correct.
Or, it's just a very casually looked at thing. It's not looked at professionally, even wildlife rescue for that matter.
True.
So I think that whole elevating the, the standards of rescue, rehabilitation in this country, that was really important to me.
Correct.
And I think the initial challenges were the fact that I really struggled with getting a good mentor, someone. So I think it just made a lot of mistakes in the start, years and years of mistakes, but learned from every mistake. Did not repeat my mistakes. So yeah, I mean, emotionally, physically, financially, it was just all really challenging. Everything was a challenge in the start. And I think one of the most important things I did was to take baby steps. Sometimes we want to do too much too quickly.
True.
So I think the whole approach of taking baby steps really helped in the start. Started small, grew it slowly, but did not give up.
And this is a form of social entrepreneurship where you're also building an organization, like you said. As a woman, have you been questioned a lot that is it something which you're doing it seriously or something? Because sometimes in social entrepreneurship or when you want to do welfare, you're not taken seriously. So were there moments like that?
So I feel like, this organization is led by a woman. We have women rescuers. We have women in every segment, every department of this organization.
Yeah.
And because this organization started from scratch, I can very confidently say that I've been there and done that for every job and role that a man does in this organization.
True.
Having said that, yes, there are challenges. I don't think it's specifically this field.
Okay.
It's generally the perception of,
Yeah.
how women are looked at times in terms of being taken seriously.
Correct.
But I think that, the work speaks for itself. If you consistently keep working, people take you seriously. People think that, maybe she plays the women card at times, but I don't need to, because the work speaks for itself.
Yes.
And it's work that has been consistently going on for over a decade. So I think that now I don't feel the setback anymore, because I don't think it's man or woman.
Yeah.
I think it's just the work and it's teamwork over here
Absolutely. And I think all these challenges are nothing in front of the way you feel when you have rehabilitated an animal and when you see that animal go into the wild and happy.
Yeah.
So that is above all the feelings, I feel.
I think that's, in fact, this whole feeling has also a lot of learnings have come from animals.
Yeah.
So you see the conditions in which animals come to us, they are really terrible. I think if as humans our limb was cut off, we would be complaining to another level, and would be intolerable for us. But the condition in which animals come, the fight they put up, how resilient they are. Now, when it comes to wildlife, it's really interesting because the fight that they have in them, their instinct of survival is so strong.
Yeah.
I mean, that is inspiring for me. No matter what comes across their way,
Correct.
just a little bit of help and they're ready to go.
Yeah.
In the domestic side, I remember when we would rescue these abandoned animals who were abused, beaten, and all of this by humans. And then, even though they were so traumatized, they were willing to trust again. How many of us, after broken relationships, or a friend has betrayed you, or somebody has done something, it's very common to hear, no, I don't trust anybody anymore.
Yeah.
But if there's one thing that I learned from animals is to keep the faith.
Yeah.
And to believe in the goodness in this world.
Correct.
So I think that's something else that I've taken from them
That's
also.
amazing. So what are the beautiful memories or the challenges which you faced during the rescue and rehabilitation when you started this organization in terms of animals?
So when I started, of course, it was more on the domestic side in the early years. At that time, in the early years, it was more about, it's not like today you see a very large team. It was not like that. We were just a couple of us, just, pulling in our own resources. I remember the first thing my father told me when I told him I want to start an NGO, and I was 23, just finished my master's, come back, had a really good job with a healthcare company as well. And he said, Neha, beggars don't do charity. And I'm like, right, but I can't sit at like a desk from 9 to 5 and do the work I want to do. If I want to help animals, I can't do this as a side thing. So he said, well, what are you going to eat? You can't survive on fresh air and love for the rest of your life. So I was like, I had to switch my career, my profession. So in the earlier years, I was, so I'm also a graphic designer. I'm self-taught.
Oh, wow.
So the rescue logo that you, yes, everything you see here is designed by me.
It's very nice. It's beautiful.
So I'm a self-taught designer. In fact, that was also born out of need, because when rescue started, there was, you had to do everything was do it yourself. So basically I had my laptop and then I could work from anywhere, started picking up small jobs, that kind of thing. But yeah, initially funding was a challenge. Everything from registering the organization, running 24/7, you know, wherever a call came from.
Yeah.
And then slowly over there. So I think that was a challenge, you know, just handling people. Animals are easier actually. People are challenging. Just dealing with people was challenging.
Yes.
Had lots of ups and downs with, you know, dealing with stuff. But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
like I
yeah.
said, just remain consistent,
Yeah.
did not give up.
And you're here, like
Yeah.
17 years after, doing
Yeah.
amazing work, and we've seen the list of animals.
Yeah,
which
these are the species we've rescued.
Exactly, and this is also an amazing design. Like we loved as a team to be seated here. You were talking about like behind the camera. You're talking about. I was asking you questions that I see a lot of reels and videos which come out of how the pets or the domestic animals are being treated badly. And there is a lot which is happening, but you told me a shocking insight that there has been something about the wildlife also. They are also equally
So, yeah.
affected.
Of course. So, see, of course, you know, animal cruelty, wildlife crime. So, you in urban cities and all, you just tend to hear of it more,
Correct,
of course. Of course, animal cruelty is prevalent, it's increasing, but the reporting is also increasing because of all the videos and cameras we have now. A lot of it gets recorded and is coming to light. In fact, a very dark side of this whole thing is that, you know, individuals who indulge in animal cruelty, I mean, it's proven, research is proven that these are the ones who in the future are, you know, your serial killers and your murderers and you know, offenders and sex offenders in that sense. So yes, checking animal cruelty at the onset is so important and apprehending the perpetrators. On the domestic side, whether it's domestic, whether it's the illegal wildlife trade, in fact, the illegal wildlife pet trade is rampant. In fact, the exotic pet trade is extremely rampant. I mean, the numbers go in thousands and lakhs. And this is not happening in some other country. It very much happens here in this country, you know, and so this is in fact massively increasing as well. So this whole fad of, you know, wanting cool, exotic, wild pets is really, really going up. So, and all those animals are being illegally bred, poached from the wild. So crime, cruelty is definitely going up. More and more awareness is needed, you know, and the thing with dealing with crime and cruelty is that at least on the wildlife side, the laws are really, really strict.
Correct.
Whereas on the domestic side, the laws are weaker at this moment.
I think I saw this example where in a pet salon.
Yes, in Mumbai.
That was tragic, and they were fined, I think, a very nominal amount.
50 rupees.
50 rupees, and it's free. I think we should have some stringent laws.
There are some incredible people working on changing this, you know, lobbying to change this law. And I'm hoping that it comes in, because only then will it be taken seriously.
Absolutely.
And whether it's wildlife, whether it's domestic, you know, the most important thing that I feel we are missing is the fact that there's no regulation on the purchase of these animals. Whether it's a dog, whether it's a cat, whether it's a turtle, whether it's a pet snake, there is no checking mechanism. There are laws, but the implementation hasn't happened as it should. And I think this is a major lacuna. When that comes in, there will be accountability.
Do you think the awareness is increasing with the rise of social media, that these things, people are actively talking about it?
Yes and no. I think that the number of people who are flaunting their pets in rather abnormal ways when it comes to wildlife and is only increasing it. And I feel like the numbers who are indulging in the pet trade outnumber the people who are doing awareness about why it is not good. So I'm glad you're doing this show, because maybe a few people will get inspired and not keep these and not indulge in it.
Yeah, because I always get this question, like we are going to go through this incredible wall which is right here about the examples and how you have rescued various domestic animals and wild. But I often get this question that when you get birds, the exotic ones, to be there at your house, and then when you can't take care of them, or if there are pets, you just take it for the fondness of, you know, let's have a pet. But they are equally as important, and you have to take care of them as a child. And sometimes people do fail to do that. So I feel really bad about it. And that's why we were like, we wanted to know something about this from an expert.
So let's divide this in two parts. So
Yeah.
when you look at domestic animals, when you look at dogs and cats,
Yeah.
and the ones on the other smaller species
Correct.
which you're allowed to keep at
Yeah,
home,
yeah.
with that, of course, it is like bringing home a family member.
Absolutely.
It's like you said, like a child which never grows up, because
Yeah.
the child will at least grow up and then
Yeah.
go to college and, you know,
Yeah.
be independent.
Yeah.
But if you have a dog, for example,
Yeah.
and if it's going to live for 14 or 15 years, you're still going to have to take it for its walk, to, you know,
Yes.
to take it a pee every single day,
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
till it is till it is with you. And I feel like people, you know, it's like people think so much before buying a car. They like procrastinate.
Yeah.
But like a dog is a life. It is, and
It's a life.
and what really upsets me is gifts. And a pet is not
Being
a
like
gift.
basket and all.
It is not a gift, you know. So I feel like this is something which is, you know, it's really sad, because it is a commitment for life. It's like a family member. Like, just because you're moving cities, you don't say, oh, I'm going to abandon my sister or brother, or, you know, or your parents or your child. So I feel people do that way more easily with pets.
I've seen pets just thrown out on the road.
Yeah,
Some of them are
happens.
running behind a car to just find that shelter.
Yeah.
You spoke about animal emotions also. They are very quick about getting back to their instinct, which is there. So I think we can talk about it
Yeah.
as we just.
Sure.
So Neha, tell me about this wall, because this is very interesting and it has species of. I think
Yeah, so
there's
these,
so many.
yeah, so this basically is, so this of course, Maharashtra is our
Yeah.
home ground.
Yes.
It's our main operational area. Pune is headquarters. These are all the species of animals that we have provided aid to through rescue. So this is more than 230 species now. And the ones in brown are mammals, and then the grey is snakes, and then the green, greenish blue is birds. And of course, if you look at, we are, you know, in Pune, but we have teams in Nashik, Daund, and Baramati.
Yeah.
And so, of course, a large part of our operations is in Western Maharashtra.
Yeah.
And we do go to other states when requested by departments, but all these animals here are all, you know, from the state. Yeah.
Like, I have a question. How do you keep a tab of so
So
many
many.
animals? And we were just chatting inside, and you were like, there are these currently this amount of animals
Yeah.
over here.
So for example, we have 382 animals that we are caring for right now at the centers. Last year in 2023, we provided aid to more than 5,500 wildlife
God.
in 2023 alone.
Yeah.
And how do we keep a track of it? So we have these online data management systems. From the moment a person calls us on a helpline, it's logged into a system.
Okay.
The team, the ambulance teams will go from then when they pick it up with photographs, locations, it's logged into the system. If it is a field response and gets released, even the release video gets logged into the system. If it requires admission, so animals come to us when they are either injured or they are orphans, or they are trafficked. So when any of these three categories that require admission come in, like for rehabilitation, they get logged into a system. And every single day, their medical records, their rehabilitation records, their photos, diagnostics, everything is logged into. So each one is a patient.
Okay.
And until the day it gets released or unfortunately passes away, everything is recorded up to that. So even if you ask me about an animal, say 3 years back, and say if somebody had called, we'll be able to look it up in seconds.
But
So-
there's a lot of insight you must be getting with this data, right? That you can reflect and you can just know that what is going right, what is going wrong, and how we can just amplify our research in that.
So research is one thing, but also there is so much direct action that also comes from it. So for example, the data is really valuable for us. We get to know very clearly, because we put in very keywords in it. So we know which animals are getting affected by what. So if we see there are too many road accident cases coming from a particular area, we will alert the authorities. For example, in certain months, we used to notice that a lot of deer and antelope would get into these conflict with the free-ranging dogs, and there
Correct.
would be a lot of
Yeah,
these dog, many of them would come with dog bite attacks. So in those areas, we ended up putting, water bodies. In fact, we are now getting lesser cases from those areas because the animals are remaining in the forest.
Yeah.
Also, it helps us predict. So
Yeah.
we know that certain species come in certain seasons. So we
Yeah.
prep in advance
Yeah.
because we know
This
that
is gonna
this is
happen.
going to happen.
Yeah.
So, for example, and then also we know
Yeah.
that, okay, so there's been a cyclone alert right now.
Yeah.
We know what to expect
Correct.
when such things happen. So
Yeah.
data really helps with that
That's
a lot.
amazing.
Yeah.
And then I want to just go and know about the amazing rescue operations you've done. And I do have a lot of questions around it.
Okay, so what you see here a lot is
This
a lot
one,
of
yeah.
city rescue. So
Yeah.
this, in fact, is a lot of very common case that we get all the
Yeah.
time, like the manja rescues. So birds who so these are all aerial, different heights, they get stuck in manja, and this is not just in December, Jan.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is all around the year. And of course, in urban areas, wildlife face different challenge.
Correct.
In
That's
peri-urban, rural areas, other human-dominated
different,
landscapes,
yeah.
different challenges. So these are a lot of the city rescues, and we over time have developed sort of better ways to do the rescues so that the recovery rates are better.
Correct.
So older techniques, involved using poles and
Yeah,
pulling them
yeah,
down
pulling
and
them.
all. So we don't do that anymore. We have telescopic poles now and
Okay,
things like that, which bring the bird down stress-free.
Yeah.
And then the veterinarians do procedures like you'll see it somewhere
Yeah.
in there. But yeah, they do procedures where their recovery time is faster and they go back out.
So, I've often seen that rescue has these incredible technology available right on the site or on their vehicles. So, can you talk about that? Because that has just advanced the way to rescue or rehabilitate.
So when it comes to rescue, of course, when we go to
Yeah.
the rescue gear
Yes.
room, I'll show you a lot more
Yeah,
of that equipment. But yes, different scenarios, like I'll show you here, for example, if you look at these, right? So these are sort of thermal drones that we use in conflict scenarios.
Yeah. This is a leopard.
Yeah, that's a leopard. These are elephants.
So this is like a night vision.
Yeah, of the leopard. So yeah, that's Turin flying the drone.
It's called the drone. What is it?
It's a thermal drone. It's a thermal UAV.
Yeah.
And so we use it for a lot of conflict scenarios to, understand. Also, it greatly adds to safety, of the animal and of people.
Yeah.
So we have literally eyes in the sky because
Yeah.
of it. And it's been
Because it's risky for, let's say, the people who are rescuing, right? Because sometimes the leopards tend to go in the farmlands.
Yes.
And then there can be a scenario where they attack.
So
Or
yeah, so this
likewise.
is literally leopard and sugarcane.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, that was one of the reasons we got this drone. And it's not just the drone, you see the dogs here as well, the sniffer dogs we have. So what we're trying to do is, so for us as rescuers, safety is absolutely important.
Yeah.
So we do use a lot of safety gear. We use different tools, technology to make sure we do better rescues. We do hands-off rescues as much as possible.
Yeah.
So better techniques, safer techniques
Correct.
to do that. So
Have there been any incidences which you can recall of that the most memorable and the most challenging from these rescues which I see of wild animals? Like any of the ones which is really stuck with you?
So this one, I mean, it's also a bit recent, but so literally 31st December, Happy New Year, that was. So this particular one, where this leopard, it was in PCMC, Pimpri Chinchwad, and it had gotten, this is proper Vasti, and it had gotten into the shed.
Okay.
And it was sitting there.
Yeah.
In fact, what happened, we basically, as soon as it saw the tranquilizer gun, it jumped out from the other side but went straight towards the Vasti. And this is because there was also a lot of disturbance from outside.
yeah.
The police had just managed to get the situation under control. This was really challenging because if you see here, the leopard was just in this patch of a field.
What is there? Oh, there's a field in there.
Yeah, so there was just this much patch. And then there's buildings and bungalows and
Yeah.
everything all around. And if it had gotten out of here, like this is literally very dense population, 5,000 people, and we had to tranquilize it. The sugarcane was almost 6 feet, and we didn't have a clear shot. So then the PCMC fire department got in this Bronto Skylift, and then our veterinarians went all the way on the top, And so I was sitting in the sky lift, and then the veterinarian was in the bucket, and the police was maintaining
Yeah.
the perimeter, and then it basically we managed to tranquilize it directly aerially from the top. So yeah, and so that was a
Is that
crazy
a dog
one.
and a leopard together?
Yeah, see, right, what happened? All the this so the leopard killed the dog. The dog is dead, unfortunately.
Oh, I thought they were jumping together.
No, they're not jumping together. And then the leopard was taking the dog out, and then it got stuck in the fence. So we had to tranquilize the leopard. And the dog, we buried it, gave it a decent burial, but we had to trank the leopard and get out. Its paw had got injured completely in the thing.
Over here, I see that there are, you constantly mention about veterinarians. How many of them are there, and what is the depth of knowledge you need for such versatile cases which are there? Because there was this one case where, the monkey one, where, the throat was cut.
Yes. So
Then there are these turtles which are badly injured, or there are these exotic animals, or the wildlife animals like a tiger. So the
Right.
range of information
Information.
and to be updated with the latest technology and what is there in medicine.
Right.
So how do you manage that? Because that is also something which I have noticed that a veterinarian has to have that information. Sometimes people don't have that.
So, see, in especially a country like ours, the education system that the veterinarians go through is largely focused on livestock.
Correct.
However, so we have 8 full-time veterinarians who work at rescue.
Okay.
And number one, some of them, a lot of training programs that they go for, which are held across, country and other countries as well. Liaising with vets, international vets as well. So that's something we engage in a lot, getting advice from outside.
Yeah.
Also, over the years, they've just gained tremendous experience. Most of our senior vets have been working with us for years.
Yes.
So they've developed experience, and in fact, now we are sharing that information with not just the newer vets, but our vets train at the state level training center. So all the government vets that are coming, they have a continuous training program.
Amazing.
So they train them as well. So we are trying to pass on the knowledge that we've had to learn the hard way. But yeah, we and also veterinarians, right? Some of them have different skills. So some are good at orthopedic surgery, some are good at medicine, some are good with birds, some are very good at reptiles. So we play to their strengths, which is why we have so many vets.
That's amazing, because there is a crocodile, there is like a turtle.
Yeah.
And reptiles also. I saw a veterinarian doing reptile surgery. Like
Yes.
It's like a snake.
Yeah.
It was a viper, right? Russell's viper.
So surgery and medicine is one thing, but in fact, our vets also have to have a good aim. So they have to tranquilize animals.
Oh, they are the same.
A veterinarian is the only is the authorized personnel to operate a tranquilization gun.
Okay.
So because
I
it's
was not
drugs,
aware about
so chemical immobilization can be only done
and
by a
the quantity
veterinarian.
has to be
Because they are proper drugs, no anesthetics. So it's only a veterinarian that can do that.
Because in humans also, it's that is the most
critical part.
And
Absolutely.
because it involves
a
lot of risks in that.
Yes.
Amazing.
This is a lot of the reunions we do. So we try our best not to, especially orphans, right? We try to reunite them back with their mothers. So this is rusty spotted cats that we've reunited, leopards, jackals.
So when you reunite, or when there are these wild animals or anybody who's in a domestic setup since they are born, like example monkeys, and usually people, when they want to rescue, they just leave them in the wild. But you said that it can be hazardous for them.
See, a wild animal that has been domesticated obviously does not know how to survive on its own. It does not. Maybe it was we've had monkeys that have come here who eat chapati, So what happens is if you leave them directly in the wild, they won't survive, because where they're going to get chapati from? So when these animals are admitted here, they go through number 1, quarantine. So disease screening. Number 2, once they're cleared of all diseases, any treatment, any medical conditions, then they undergo a very rigorous rehabilitation process.
Correct.
Where slowly that captive diet is weaned off, and then they're introduced to natural foods. After the diet part is sort of sorted, then they will be introduced to wild counterparts who may have come here for accidents, other injuries, and then they're introduced to their own species, and then grouped. So monkeys are social animals. Many parakeets, birds that come are also social in that sense. So they're grouped with the right kind. and then they you'll be amazed how they, how their instincts just kick back in,
Yes.
and then they lose their affinity to people.
Yeah.
And we've observed that not once but hundreds of times.
Yes.
And once they integrated into the troop, they don't want anything to do with you, and then they
Correct.
survive perfectly fine.
That's amazing.
But it's a
because-
process.
Yeah, because we didn't know about this process. It's something which we don't think about, like freeing a bird like that, or just leaving somebody in the
Yeah.
wild.
So what's really important to
Yeah.
know is only Indian wildlife
Hmm.
can be reintroduced back.
Okay.
The exotic wildlife that comes
Cannot
here
be.
didn't belong to this country. In fact, many times they become invasive.
Yeah.
So I think there's a picture here. Do you see this? So
Yes.
this is a temple actually.
Yeah.
So again, how how you were mentioning to me that people abandon their pets.
Absolutely.
So in this pond, we removed 99 turtles. Out of that, 66 were exotic species.
Okay.
And the rest were all Indian species. So we were able to rehabilitate the Indian species. They were all injured because the exotics are actually stronger and had really butchered the Indian ones. So the Indian ones, luckily, we had to quarantine them, treat them,
Then,
rehab, and
same-
release them.
yeah.
But we released them back in suitable habitats.
Okay.
The exotic ones you couldn't release back because they don't belong in this country.
Yeah.
In fact, it's a very big problem. Red-eared sliders, one of
Yeah.
the most common turtle you can buy off the
Correct.
internet,
Yeah.
unfortunately, is globally an invasive species. And
Okay.
people, when they get tired or it becomes
Yeah.
too big, they just leave it in our natural bodies, and then that kills our Indian wildlife. So it's a threat, actually. It's so sad, but it's true. Yeah.
So what do you do of
The exotics you have to hang on to. You have to keep them in lifetime care.
Take care.
Yes. Because there's no way to understand their country of origin and where they
Yeah,
came
yeah,
from and
yeah.
sending them back. That's not
That's
possible.
amazing, and I would like to have a look at the centers and where
Yeah.
actually the rehabilitation and the rescue happens. And
Yeah.
you told me about the species which are there right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to know that. And you do a lot of initiatives here.
Yeah, we do a lot of school programs, a lot of community
awareness,
education.
yeah.
Yeah.
Why awareness is important in children about this
There's-
specific subject?
Because you see, they are the next generation.
Yeah.
I feel like the generation that has gone is already has their views in place.
Yes.
In fact, whether it's the legal pet trade, or appreciating our
Yeah.
wildlife, being sensitive about
Correct.
coexisting
Yes.
with animals, in whatever ecosystem they may be, whether it's a city, whether it's rural areas.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
True.
And I think a lot of comes out of fear of the unknown. So I feel like a lot of the education we do, the more we talk to them about it, when they understand the behavior of an animal, when they know the do's and don'ts, they'll make better choices. And then that is going to help animals in the future.
Yeah, because
So-
having knowledge about it than half knowledge from internet is so important,
Important,
and having
yeah.
these open conversations.
Yeah.
Because I've seen a lot of children also making these presentations about why vegan is important, like why you should protect a certain animal and all of
Correct.
that. So that's so important right now to
Yeah.
future
We
generations.
do, our education programs between 4,000 to 5,000
Yeah.
children, local
Yeah.
community members, every month we do.
Amazing.
Yeah. Do, our education programs between 4,000 to 5,000
Yeah.
children, local
Yeah.
community members, every month we do.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's incredible work, yeah. Like that is something which is we are learning as a team right now, and I'm excited to go to the centers where we can see the animals. So happy.
So this is the veterinary block.
Yeah.
I'll show you, of course, where treatment, surgeries, and all happen.
Sure.
We will go to the nurseries.
Yeah.
But just a quick one: don't touch the animals.
No,
you
no,
might
I'm
be
not.
tempted to, but don't.
No, no.
Yeah. Guess the animal.
Elephant.
You just saw that and
Yeah.
guessed. Yeah. That's a different animal. Just this.
No, it's hard to guess.
Squirrel.
What?
Yeah. That's how its X-ray looks.
Said elephant.
So this is a really scary one actually. This is a big rod that had gone into a python. And then we had to do a crazy surgery to remove it. This was a turtle whose shell had cracked, and these are fixtures that were put. This is a monitor lizard, and we
this is
realized.
bad.
Yeah, it was really bad. Full proper rod had gone through it. That's a jackal who with a broken jaw, and then we fixed it. Yeah. Come. So right now there's no cases going on, but just for for you to see, there's the treatment room,
It's quite nice.
and then there's a OT here. So this is the OT.
How critical are the operations? Like how long does it stay?
A typical
the rod
procedure?
one which you said, yeah.
Oh, that?
How-
I'll ask Dr.
how-
Chetan, but it takes hours. And you know, there have been times where we've had cases come in at 11, 12, and we're in surgery till like 4, 5, 6 in the morning.
Oh my God.
So we run a 24 hours operation, 365 days a year.
That's amazing.
There is
Yeah,
no
because
day off.
there's no-
Yeah.
That's the dedication of the team which goes behind this.
Yeah, the team is
And you know
incredible.
the pets can't, or you know the animals cannot tell you that this is hurting or that is like you have to identify that this is the
Yeah.
core cause of the.
Yeah, that's true. This is just for you to see. So this is where birds are. There are birds inside.
Yeah, they're just.
So they are under cage rest. There are a lot of wetland birds here, so you can smell the fish right now. This is the area nursery for the smaller birds.
Okay.
So yeah, we've got a lot of pond herons because some trees fell in big one, and then a lot of them came. So yeah, all little. It's there on the top. See that?
Yeah.
So what is this? So you see it maintains the temperature and humidity.
Okay.
So the survival rate of the animals is much better when they are put in these. So basically they go through many stages. So once they're done with the incubator stage, then they will go to the box stage, and then they will go to the outdoor stage. Then from there they go to the large incubator. So there are almost 4 steps before they go back out. There should be some here as well. And then in the back.
They've just eaten, so they've made quite a mess. But very needy. He's okay to pet.
Yeah, so cute. So we just moved around and we saw all the amazing facilities you have for operation, and then I've seen these chambers where birds are taken care of, and then there were tiny monkeys which are there. And in this particular critical care unit, there was this temperature control system and that incubator which was there. And then suddenly I thought about you've seen the climate change and all the things which are happening around and the heat currently. Is it affecting the wildlife? What are the things which you've noticed?
Most certainly, it is. The erratic weather changes definitely have been affecting animals. We've been seeing more and more dehydrated, cases of animals dehydrated coming in. Besides that, the erratic rain that happens, the cyclones that have been increasing by the years.
Yeah.
This results in the breeding cycles are, and the migration cycles there. They've been completely messing up with that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's happens is, especially with erratic rains, you will have suddenly we get calls of trees fallen down with nestlings, and we'll have 30, 40, 50, sometimes 100 birds coming in at one shot, and all the nests are destroyed. So when we talk about climate change, of course we've been seeing differences in migration patterns. We've been seeing which animals are affected. There've been changes in their breeding seasons.
Correct.
So definitely it is affecting the animals.
Because I saw the board, also the patient board, which says that the bird was dehydrated.
Yeah, so a lot of them have been coming due to dehydration, and the only good thing about that is that once treated, given that little bit of push, they do they recover pretty fast. The only other thing is, and animals are really they adapt really fast. So I think they will take some time to adapt to these. They will cope up.
Okay. Yeah. That's incredible to know. So this is an amazing facility which we got a chance to peek into, but we are very lucky to be a part and come here and just see. It is they're 24/7 available, like anytime, like at 11 in the night or 12 in the night. The operation unit is completely operational and it's on, and you can just
Call on the
have
helpline.
call the helpline and just get your wildlife and animals rescued. It's incredible.
So this facility is 22 acres.
Okay.
And don't worry, we're not walking 22 acres.
I would love to actually. If there are animals, I would love to.
And the other facility is a 2-acre facility.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they
So-
are like that side of it. You said
So
that
it's
this
exactly
is a new,
that side. So it's like from the back gate, it's like 600 meters.
okay.
We'll take the car to go there.
Okay.
But we've got, so these 2 blocks you see, this is
Yes.
the admin we were in, and this is the veterinary block.
Yeah.
This is where we are keeping our canids right now. A few of them have moved here, jackals and hyenas. And over here, we've got all our deer and like all our
Yeah,
deer
yeah.
antelopes. So we'll go see that. We'll also go see the gear room,
Yes.
and yeah, maybe that.
What is your perspective on zoos?
On zoos, see, originally zoos were started to with an education perspective.
Yeah.
Today, I feel in today's times where there are so many other ways
Yeah.
for children to
Yeah.
learn about animals. So I am not very pro the concept
Yeah.
of zoos, simply because it's about putting a wild animal in captive care for life. So I'm not very pro that.
Correct.
I do believe they play a very important role sometimes for species that are on the verge of extinction, and then
breeding and
for
just-
captive breeding, especially
Yeah.
for that, but with the intention of releasing them back, of reintroducing them back to the wild.
Okay.
But largely zoos aren't focused on that.
Because I personally would love to go to a forest in like me being captivated, like in a small
vehicle,
jeep,
yeah.
in a vehicle, than
That is true.
captivating the zoo animals, like animals, like the wildlife into the.
So our entire philosophy at Rescue is about
that.
keeping wildlife wild.
Correct.
And they remain wild in their natural habitat. So
Yeah.
from the minute an animal comes in to rescue, our plan is entirely focused on what do we need to do to get this animal back to its natural habitat
Correct.
as fast as possible,
Absolutely.
to avoid human imprinting,
You've,
to avoid captivity time.
Yeah, you've done that for the ones who never saw the wild also, like the domestic, the monkeys and all. You've made sure that the instincts come up and they are just left in the wild. So that's amazing.
So it's not just that, it's so many animals
Yeah.
who, previously used to be sent to zoos,
Okay.
or not really zoos, but
Yeah.
into lifetime care, like rusty spotted cats, hyenas,
Yeah.
which if anyone found an orphan, it would be deemed to captivity for life.
Yeah.
So in fact, we have sent, I don't know, more than, I don't know how many of these animals
yeah,
back to the
yeah,
wild.
correct.
So it's not necessary that they came from captivity.
Yeah.
Sometimes they are displaced.
Oh,
Especially in Western Maharashtra, you have
Yeah.
a lot of, the main crop now is sugarcane.
Correct.
And that is the breeding ground
Yeah.
for the rusty spotted cat.
True.
And so when harvesting happens, or if there's erratic weather again, then they get exposed.
Yeah.
And most times we reunite them back with the mothers.
Yeah.
But if that fails somewhere, then they are still raised to go back.
Okay.
So they don't go into lifetime care. So I
Okay.
feel that is something. We had a hyena who was, I think, came to us when she was 400 grams.
Yeah.
And then we raised her. She was till she was 21 kilos.
Yeah.
Till we would keep monitoring her hormone levels
Yes.
and things like that. We collared her and released her. We tracked her for almost a year, and she did perfectly well.
That's amazing.
So this is an animal that would have been stuck, whatever you say, even if you have the largest enclosure, it's still an enclosure. So at least it went back to freedom.
That's beautiful. And now we are entering the rehabilitation center. If you just look at the.
So all our enclosures are named after indigenous Indian trees. So this is umbar,
Yeah.
then that's kokam, that's babur.
Okay.
Then if you go to our older center, they're all named after indigenous Indian trees, because trees, of course, support life. and
That's true.
trees and wildlife go
Yeah.
together. So,
And
yeah.
they we all
Coexist. Yeah. So in this block, you see all of these. These are the species that are generally housed in this block, and these are the kind of conditions they come from. So injured, fallen in wells with breaks.
You know, like you showed me about the leopard who entered a
Yeah,
village or a
yeah.
city, PCMC. So, has that increased over the period of time?
It has, I mean, because our cities are expanding,
Yeah.
which were originally their habitats. So they are coming, they are adapting to living with us. I think we need to adapt better as well.
Yeah.
But yes, they do come in a lot into conflict and into conflict, and I think this is why our work is so important.
True.
Because our needs are increasing,
Yeah.
and which is fine. Development is very important for this
Correct.
country,
Yeah.
but and the state, but I feel like this coexistence which needs to happen. Sometimes we come into conflict, and I feel like every single animal that we are able to provide aid to, send back to the wild, is sort of combating the development that's happening
Yeah.
somewhere, because I feel like you're just trying to balance it off.
Yeah.
so yeah.
Because there's like whenever anybody spots an animal, like a wild animal in a city, there's a scare, or like people start beating it up or doing those things, and then you guys come in and there's this helpline which is available.
Yeah.
So that is, I think, solving the problem, but the bigger problem is what you
So
said.
which is what I said, people are afraid. You can't blame them for being afraid.
Yeah,
They're not
yeah.
exposed, they don't know better.
They don't know, yeah.
So which is why the programs we do related to community awareness education
Is
is
so
so
important,
important.
yeah.
Yeah.
This one's friendly.
So this one's come from another rescue center which closed down. That's why he's coming to us. If you go to any of the other ones, they won't come.
Yeah.
He's
this
been
one.
human imprinted. The other so this is like, he also has an amputation. So it's an inter-organization transfer. But this is essentially where all the drugs, so the Shrutika, she maintains all the inventory, anything that comes in here, so all the medicines.
So that the anti-venoms and all also are there?
Yeah,
Yes,
everything
make
we
one.
have. Yeah. But we have had no incidences so far. So this is all stuff that people have donated us. Everything you see here, every little thing, the medicines, some stuff they've donated us, some, I mean, people have just given us their furniture and stuff, and everything you see in rescue is donated by somebody.
But that's so amazing,
Yeah.
that it's like a community driven.
It is. It truly is.
Yeah.
And I feel a lot of people care. They maybe do not have the time to, come and spend
they
here and to
feel
do
about
that.
it.
They
Yeah.
feel strongly about it. And as many of our donors tell us, they live their dreams vicariously through us, because, they were like, we'd love to come and help you,
Yes.
but we can't physically. So here's our way to help.
Yeah.
They send us stuff. They
Yeah.
buy us ambulances, medicines, food. I mean, everything you see here is because of the generosity of people. So, while I feel like another thing that this really does is make people feel like they're, a part of a cause.
Yeah.
So, I think that's really amazing as well.
Like a family which
Yes.
rescue is built.
We have doctors who are human doctors
Yes.
who come and lend their experience here, and some of them are incredible because we get to learn so much from them as well.
yeah.
So, I mean, people are willing to share, people are willing to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing that this organization enables,
Yeah.
for people to be a part of that
I think
cause.
if you are watching this, you also can be a part of this by supporting rescue and the things which they do here. So do check their website out and all the details. And I've seen the Instagram which is sharing, I think, the live updates of what happens over there. So yeah.
Come, we'll peek into the gear room, so you'll understand where the operations really begin. So all our communication devices, lights, walkie-talkies, everything that we need, all the technical rescue gear, all the
this is
ascending,
amazing.
descending, So climbing down wells, aerial rescues, underground rescues, those kind of things.
It's there.
Yes. So we have rescuers in our team who are professional rock climbers. mountaineers who are trained, certified, and now they
But
work
is
here
it
full
like,
time.
yeah, so how do you find these incredible people?
It's taken years.
How do
That
you
was
find-
one of the biggest challenges
Yeah.
because it's taken years to build this team, and I think it's happened because people have somewhere seen the work, been a part, volunteered here, and then just chosen this as
Because this is an unconventional job.
most certainly. And one of the things I feel that I have managed to do is, they say I always tell people, it's a non-governmental organization, not a
True.
non-governmental disorganization.
True.
There is no difference between us and a corporate,
Correct.
except
Yeah.
they are for profit and we are not for profit.
True.
And so we have every system in our organization, whether it's legal and compliances,
Yeah.
whether it's HR, whether it's
Yeah.
joining, whether it's your attendance and you're clocking in and out. So the team definitely conforms to
that.
structure,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it is still, we have each other's backs because the kind of situations we go in,
Correct.
we have to remain well coordinated.
Yeah.
So there is incredible teamwork in play.
Yeah.
And I had to think 20 times before changing my line of work. But I've grown the organization in a way where this is now people's careers.
Yeah.
Like some of the people you've met here today have left their IT jobs, they've left jobs from other things, and they are now working here. And this is full time, and this is now become a career choice, which it was never before.
Exactly, because this is a full-time thing, and
Yes.
the way you said, usually in corporates or how I've learned about entrepreneurship or everything, they say that, your job or where you work is not a family, but here I see a family which you've
It is
built on empathy, right? Like usually
Yeah.
they say, don't mix up making friends or family at work, but this is completely opposite. You're creating an ethos that is driven by that family bond and that empathy which come towards the animals and towards each other.
So we're all bound by the cause. That's number one. Somewhere it's an unspoken thing that when you are at work,
Yeah.
we demand that we all work professionally. The minute we are off that, there is a sense of closeness because see, it's besides the professional and the work aspect of it, this kind of work takes a toll on you.
True.
You are working 365 days a year. Of course, all the employees have a mandatory weekly off, which they don't sometimes take. But the thing is that we are working every day. You are seeing life and death every single day.
Yeah.
They say an average person goes through, goes through 3 major traumatic incidents in their life.
Yeah.
We are essentially first responders, and first responders essentially probably go through maybe 170, 200 traumatic experiences. So somewhere you are each other's support systems.
Yeah.
Each one of us deals with things differently, but we're there for each other.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So this is again
that's-
donated by one of our donors.
I thought you were a man.
Yeah, you got it right.
I didn't know that it had a frame or something.
I thought it's just this mannequin over here.
Looks very real. Yeah, that came out from a theater, and this was done. This of course,
This is really cool.
rescuers have to be fit, so we train. Yeah.
This
so
is
we are,
also like this is for when there's an attack.
yeah, safety.
Safety.
Yes, leopards, those kind of things. The rafts and all for disaster rescues, flood situations, those kind of things. Yeah. Yeah, he's attempting to catch a snake. It's a fake one.
Yeah. See, I'm also.
Yeah, you can take a picture with.
He's yet to have a complete kit. He has to wear shoes as well.
Yeah. His shoes are missing. Should we go to TDC one? So currently here we only have the deer, antelope, and some of the canids.
Yeah.
We'll go to our other center and see the leopards.
Amazing.
Camera shy. For whoever says cats don't like water, this is one wild cat who does. let's do
So
a
like I wanted to ask you questions that when they come over here and they are in this facility, and I think he is in the lifetime, that one is in the lifetime facility. So how do you identify between a man-eater leopard and
see, there are three different things
Yeah.
with leopards. So we get a lot of cases which are injury cases
Correct.
and things like that. Those ones which come from the,
Yeah.
they are always,
Yeah.
you know, grown up whether in human-dominated landscapes or forest.
Yeah.
They go back
Okay.
after they recover.
Yeah.
These ones have come to us transferred from another facility.
Okay.
So they were in long-term care
Yeah,
over there,
yeah.
and now they're here.
come
This,
here.
yeah, and we're still waiting for them to be placed into
Yeah.
maybe another lifetime care facility. The
Okay.
forest department is working on it.
Okay.
Generally, the ones that come from the wild recover, go back to the
Go
wild.
back. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. So it's these guys who've been
He's lovely,
transferred.
yeah.
Yeah. She's generally grumpy.
I've seen, like, I was at this facility. Oh,
She'll do that, but she also wants to be petted. She's also weird that way. She's giving you a nice shot.
so like I was at this facility of rehabilitation somewhere, and there were specifically man-eater leopards there. So they charge at you. You
Right.
know, like I've
So-
seen that. So what is the difference in that?
No. So
What-
it's not
how
the
does-
man-eater leopard is
Yeah.
charging at you.
Yeah.
A wild leopard will charge
Charge
at
at
you.
me. Okay.
Any wild leopard, whether it's a man-eater
They
or
will just-
not.
yeah.
Okay. A man-eater is actually that's a misnomer.
Huh,
It's
yeah.
generally we generally refer to it as a problem animal.
Okay.
And what has happened is sometimes they get into accidental attacks, which
Yeah.
then may become a pattern.
Okay.
How to identify? It's only if an attack has happened and then you take a DNA swab
Yeah.
from the person who's
Correct.
injured or unfortunately passed
Yeah,
away.
yeah.
Then you have to then capture the leopard and
Okay.
test it.
Okay.
Sometimes if there is a death, the leopard visits back over there, especially with livestock and things like
Correct.
that. You put camera traps and
Yeah.
identify the animal.
Okay.
So there's a lot of work that goes behind
Yeah.
identifying
Yeah.
which is the problem animal.
Yeah.
So not all,
Not all are-
animals are
yeah.
problem animals.
So that is like a misconception which we usually have, but it is not the case. Like it is something like one or two cases might have happened, but they are generally, you know, like wild. It's not something where it is a specifically man-eater.
And actually what happens now is there are so many
Cases
which are happening simply because you see we are becoming too close to each other.
True.
So our population is increasing
Yeah.
and their population is increasing and our interaction is increasing.
Correct.
Accidents happen and then they blow out of proportion. So what we're trying to
what-
do here is to mitigate those situations. Make
Correct.
sure those
Yeah.
situations don't happen as
Yeah.
much as possible.
Yeah.
So a lot of the work we do is to reduce the conflict. She's really posing today. She
Yeah.
never does this normally.
We can take a picture with her. She's very comfortable right now.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, like-
Just don't stick your finger
No,
in.
no, no.
You will
I
not have a
another-
finger. See, Amazon is gone up there.
She looks cute and cuddly, but
No.
she's a wild animal.
Yes. So the only reason we are so close to them, and these are the only ones you'll notice have names.
Oh, yeah.
None of our wild animals are given names
Yeah.
because you see we don't keep that attachment
Exactly.
because they have to go back to the wild.
True, that's
These
true.
came from lifetime care
That's
and
why
that is why they have
a
names.
names.
So there's John, Yeva, Rani,
Yeah.
Usain Bolt
Yeah.
and Mo.
Yeah. Bye bye. I had an amazing experience. Like I have just learned so much today, and I've seen what amazing work and hard work everyone is putting to. Thank you for having us today at this incredible organization and center, and looking forward to much more which we can do together. What did you think about this whole conversation?
I'm so glad that you came, and I'm really looking forward to this because one of the things I feel very strongly is that the more people know about the work that's going into
Yeah.
protecting our, you
Yes.
know, into protecting Maharashtra's wildlife
Yes.
and the amount we're doing here. And I think just spreading the awareness is so important right now in
Yes.
today's times. And I thank you for doing that.
Thank you for the time, and we all had amazing experience. And thank you so much for helping. Just put the camera there. He was constantly with us, so thank you so much. And the episode will be out. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you.